Ciao, travelers, and welcome to our episode. We are going to talk about contiguous, which means together, transcontinental countries. So geography, power, and the limits of continents. I forgot to say in the last podcast is that it is my birthday month, January. Hopefully this comes out in January 22nd. So I will be turning 40. So if you ever wonder what the GeoMike 122, the 122 means, it's my birthday, January 22nd. So happy birthday to my fellow January and 1986 babies. I'm going to tell you this. Time goes by fast. So do what you love and spend time with the people you love. All right, let's get into our trivia. Okay. With its giant casinos and malls, which island is known as the Las Vegas of Asia? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's to Macau. Which animals run through the streets during Spain's Fiesta San Fermin? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is bulls. In terms of land area, what is the largest country in North America? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is Canada. Canada is actually one of my favorite countries to visit. I do enjoy Canada. All right, so let's get into it. We are doing, and if you hear in the background little bells and little crunchy sounds, it's the girls are playing up here. My podcast room is now the girls' playroom. And when I mean girls, I mean our cats. All right, let's see. Okay, so remember, we're talking about contiguous. That means you can pretty much drive to and cross over without a passport. For example, Alaska is not part of the contiguous United States because you need to drive through Canada to get there. Or Hawaii is not part of the contiguous United States because you need to take a long boat ride without a bridge. All right, so contiguous transcontinental countries occupy a peculiar position in world geography. They are states whose uninterrupted land territory spans more than one continent, crossing boundaries that are widely taught politically meaningful, culturally resonant, yet fundamentally artificial. Kind of even like the ideas of continents. Like, for example, Europe and Asia are one huge landmass called Eurasia, but because of political and human culture development, China developed on one side, then you had Greece, and then you had Roman and Italy on one side. Even though it's one supercontinent, because of the history and politics, they divided into two. Unlike maritime empires or countries with overseas territories, these states challenge continental divisions from within their own borders. Their existence exposes the instability of continents and analytical units and highlights how political power, historical expansion, and geographic convention combine to shape the modern state system. If you're watching on YouTube, this is our introduction of Lola. Puffin came in a couple episodes ago. Hi, Lo. She's wondering, she's like, why is that window shut? Okay, so if you hear noises, that's Lola living her best life. Okay. At first glance, continents appear to be natural categories grounded in geology. However, while tectonic plates offer one way to divide Earth's surface, continental boundaries are commonly understood. Europe, Asia, Africa, and so on are cultural constructs developed over centuries. The Europe-Asia divide in particular is not defined by a clear geological rupture, like a tectonic fault line. The Ural Mountains and Ural River are modest physical features compared to other global mountain systems, yet they've been elevated into a continental boundary largely for historical and ideological reasons. Contiguous transcontinental states exist precisely because political borders have been drawn across these conceptual seams rather than aligning neatly with them. Russia, the largest country in size, is the archetypal, I can't say that, is the quintessential, there you go, contiguous transcontinental country and the clearest example of how continental categories fail to capture political reality. Stretching from Eastern Europe across Northern Asia to the Pacific Ocean, Russia spans 11 time zones and contains an extraordinary range of climates, ecosystems, and cultures. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Russia has the most time zones for countries. The Ural Mountains, conventionally identified as the boundary between Europe and Asia, have never functioned as a meaningful internal barrier. Russian administration, infrastructure, and military control extend seamlessly across them. Historically, Russian expansion eastward was not framed as transcontinental conquest, but as territorial consolidation, transforming Siberia into an eternal colony that later became an integral part of the state. So Siberia is the Asian side of Russia, which is like one of the coldest cities. The coldest city is there. As a result, Russia's European and Asian halves are politically inseparable, even if cultural narratives often emphasize one identity over the other. Russia demonstrates the continental affiliation is less important to state cohesion than centralized power, transportation networks, and institutional continuity. Now, Turkey represents a different but equally revealing form of contiguous transcontinentality. Its territory straddles southeastern Europe and Western Asia, separated by the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits. Unlike the Urals, these waterways are narrow but geopolitically immense, controlling maritime access between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. So the Black Sea opens up to countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, and then the northern coast of Turkey. So it's very important, that little passageway. Turkey's European territory, East Thrace, is small in area and population compared to Anatolia, yet its symbolic importance is enormous. Since the foundation of the Turkish Republic, political debates over national identity, secularism, and foreign alignment have frequently been framed in continental terms. Europe as modern, legal, and institutional, Asia as historic, cultural, and demographic. Turkey's bid for membership in European institutions illustrates how continental boundaries can become political gatekeeping devices rather than neutral geographic facts. Turkey's contiguous transcontinental nature makes it a literal and metaphorical bridge, but also a fault line where competing identities and strategic interests collide. And the city, I believe it's the only transcontinental city, unless if some people classify Panama as transcontinental. So I don't know, Panama City might be into that, but it would be Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople. So Ottoman Empire was very big, the Eastern Roman Republic Empire. So it's a very important region. All right, so we're sticking in that Asia-Europe realm to Kazakhstan, which I did an episode, and check it out if you don't know what stan means, offers a subtler example of continuous transcontinentality, often overlooked in popular discussions. I think Kazakhstan is one of the most underrated countries. I do, for my birthday, want to go to a Kazakh restaurant in the city. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm going to get there one day. And Kazakhstan has Turkic. It's similar to the language because Turkish people came from Western China. Okay, and then they went all the way to Turkey. By the most widely accepted definition, the Ural River forms part of the Europe-Asia boundary, placing a small portion of Western Kazakhstan in Europe. While this European segment is demographically minor, Its existence has diplomatic and symbolic significances. Kazakhstan's leadership has occasionally emphasized its partial European status to reinforce the country's multi-vector foreign policy, balancing relations with Russia, China, and Western states. Western states would be Europe and the United States and Canada. In this case, transcontinentality functions less as an internal identity struggle and more of an external positioning tool, illustrating how continental classification can be mobilized strategically even when it has little everyday relevance. Now, not all frequently cited cases qualify as contiguous transcontinental countries. Egypt, for example, controls the Sinai Peninsula, which lies in Asia, while the rest of the country is in Africa. Although the Sinai is connected by land, the construction of the Suez Canal complicates claims of contiguity by introducing a permanent artificial waterway. And that's the same thing with the Panama Canal. So some people think north of the Panama Canal is North America and south of it is South America, and other people believe the Darien Gap, in between Panama border and Colombia, that's the division of the continents. More importantly, Egypt's political, demographic, and cultural center of gravity remains firmly African and Middle Eastern rather than transcontinental in practice. Similarly, countries like Indonesia and Panama, there we go, are sometimes described as transcontinental, but their territories are either archipelagic or too narrow to meaningfully challenge continental divisions through continuous landmass. Excluding these cases helps preserve analytical clarity and underscores why contiguity matters. Uninterrupted land continually allows continental divisions to be crossed internally rather than bridged externally. Okay. Ultimately, contiguous transcontinental countries reveal the limitations of continental thinking itself. Continents persist because they are useful education and cultural shortcuts, not because they reflect clear natural divisions. States that span them expose this weakness, showing that political power routinely overrides geographical categorization. In an era of globalization, climate change, and shifting geopolitical alignments, these countries matter disproportionately. Their territories often encompass critical resources, strategic choke points, and frontier regions where global tensions are most likely to surface. All right, so that was the contiguous transcontinental countries. All right, let's get into our trivia before we call it a night. Okay, according to Guinness World Records, what is the longest river in the world? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is the River Nile in Africa. Speaking of Africa, and it goes through Greece. Okay. The President of the United States lives in a house named after which color? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is white for the White House. Okay. Oh, we talked about this too, Scandinavia, last episode. Which is the largest Scandinavian country? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that is Sweden. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And remember, if you know geography, you know anyone. And have a good day. Ciao, travelers.